So we are going to start 2025 with a word that is going to revolutionize your year and I hope your life. It's a word that I didn't use very much at the end of 2024. And it's a word that will refocus and recalibrate and return your attention to God who's on the throne. Are you ready for this word that's going to change your entire year? And my prayer is your life. Are you ready for it? It's this word. It's a simple word. No. Not K-N-O-W. It's just a two-letter word, N-O, no. This word will change your January, and I believe that it will change your year and your life if we take this word seriously. So say it with me on three. 1, 2, 3. That's the word. And why is that word so revolutionary? Because in a culture of endless options, the word no is revolutionary. In a world that's begging you to always and forever say yes, the word no will actually change your life. And the no that I'm talking about is the no that accompanies or goes along with the word discipline. Everybody say discipline. Saying no to some things so that you can say yes to the better thing. That's the kind of no I'm talking about. Saying no to some things so you can say yes to the better things. This series is about spiritual disciplines, and if you're not familiar with it, we're going to get into those. The title of this series is Discipline Equals Delight. Discipline equals delight. Saying no to some things to say yes to the better thing will actually change your life. And I think a lot of us, when we think about discipline, we think of discipline as something really hard, and it can be. But when we engage in these disciplines that Jesus actually engaged in his own life, we start to experience delight as we stop buying into the lie of all the things that we've been saying yes to and start trusting God that a no to the right thing and a yes to the right thing equals a delight because we're walking in his plans and his purposes for our life. So the purpose of this series is to intentionally say no to some of what the world offers to us and yes to the things that Jesus calls us into. And tonight we're going to talk about fasting. Everybody say fasting. Fasting can bring up a lot of different emotions in us, maybe curiosity, maybe fear, maybe anxiety. Maybe you've had a tough relationship with food in some way, shape, or form. So this brings up a lot in you. I want to honor anything that's brought up in anybody in this room tonight as we talk about fasting. And I also want to invite you to be curious about what this practice might be able to do in your life, not because of the practice of fasting, but because of what God does in the practice of fasting. It's not just not eating or not doing something or engaging in something. It's what God does when we say no to something so that we can say yes more fully to him for a season. This is in Matthew 6, 16 through 18 is what the passage that we're going to get into. And this is Jesus talking. And Jesus talks about fasting. And this is what he says. He says, when you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others that they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received the reward in full, but when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. I want to pray one more time just for the specific moment, and we're going to get into this text. God, I thank you for every person in this room. There's not one person in this room that's here by accident. You have appointed them to be in this room tonight. And so, God, I pray that you would give us the gift of being present with you tonight, not distracted by anything that we came in here with, but present with what you want to do in our lives. God, you speak through your word and through your spirit. So would you speak through your word and through your spirit to our hearts, to our minds, to our bodies, to our very beings tonight, God? Would you wake up things that are sleeping? Would you heal things that are broken? And would you bring things back to life that are dead and dying in our lives? And we pray these things in Jesus' name. And everybody said? So this passage that we just read was from Jesus' most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. And this is arguably, it is his most famous sermon of all time. And when it comes to the issue of fasting, he speaks on it. And he doesn't say if you fast or when you get around to fasting or if some point in the future you might want to be a really good follower of mine and fast. He says when you fast. Everybody say when. Not when. Say when. This is what Jesus is saying. He's saying when you fast. He says it twice in this passage, and he talks about it. He talks about this is something between you and God. This isn't a show for other people. This isn't something that you're putting on for anybody else. This is something that's between you and God. He says when you fast. And when he says when you fast, he points out this fact. Fasting isn't an elective in the Christian life. If you call yourself a Christian, fasting isn't an elective. You know what an elective is, right? Like when you're in college and there's like fun classes you can take. I took a golf class in college. I took a basketball class in college, aced it, awesome, easy, right? So like you can take electives in college that are fun, but then if you're a business major, you have to take finance. If you're a communications major, you have to take like public speaking, right? If you're a Bible major, you can't just like maybe take New Testament or Old Testament. You're taking those. It's the same with our walk with Jesus. He's calling us to a life that includes fasting. It is a core requirement in some way, shape, or form. If this ruffles your feathers the wrong way, just stay with me. You're going to get the heart of this really quick. When it comes to fasting, it's not an elective, and hear this, and this is why. When we choose to follow Jesus, we're not just agreeing to a set of beliefs about who he is, we seek to live the life that he lived. So Jesus and a relationship with him isn't just about a mental assent of like, I believe the right things about you, therefore I have a relationship with you, therefore I get into heaven, and then I just get to go live however I want. No, Jesus invited anybody to follow him, to come follow him, walk with him, live like he lived, do life the way that he did it. And from everything we see about Jesus' life, Jesus fasted. We see him fasting 40 days in the wilderness before he started his ministry. It's his temptation in the desert. As a rabbi in first century Judea, fasting would have been a way of life for Jesus on a weekly, monthly basis. It was baked into who he was. It just was what he did. The early church fasted for centuries, typically Wednesdays and Fridays. So this was a practice and a tradition that those in the church that came right after Jesus' life opted into. And it was a very normal thing. But over the years, and I would say especially in evangelical spaces, we've drifted away from fasting as something that is an elective and not core to our faith. We see it as something that maybe super Christians do, but you kind of have to be crazy to fast, and only like people who are really, really crazy about Jesus would lean into this. But if we look at the Sermon on the Mount, if we look at Jesus' words, he doesn't say if you fast, he says when you fast. So there's a presupposed understanding and a preposition here that Jesus is giving to us that we fast if we follow him. So fasting is meant to be core to our faith. What is fasting? I want to start with what fasting is not, because I do think there's a lot of things that get wrapped up in fasting that you have to untangle to see it clearly. There's a whole lot of anxiety that can get wrapped up in this, a whole lot of misconceived notions. A lot of things can get wrapped up in fasting, and you have to kind of untangle it by saying what it's not before you talk about what it is. The first thing it is not only for super Christians. It's not just for people who are super serious about their faith. It's for anybody who claims to be a follower of Jesus. If you confessed him with your tongue, if you believe in your heart, if you claim to be a Christian, Jesus is saying, when you do this, this is how you do it. So we fast as Christians. And again, as I'm saying this, I need you to hear this. I'm not speaking from some pedestal talking down to you. I am talking down here with you because fasting has not been a normal thing in my Christian life over the 15, 20 years I've been following Jesus. This is something that has been sporadic in my life and something that I want to commit to more and more and more. So when I'm just saying this is a core requirement, don't think I'm talking down to you. I'm talking with you. I'm talking to myself. I'm preaching to myself here. Fasting is not a way to atone for your sins. Fasting isn't a way for God to like you more, for you to be in good graces with God. It's not a way for you to earn anything from God or earn your forgiveness in any way, shape, or form. Fasting is not a way to manipulate God. If you really want him to answer your prayers, fasting does not make God answer your prayers in the way that you want them answered by God. That's not what fasting is. It's also not a time management tool. Truth is, you can save some time when you're not having to go out to lunch anywhere, or eat breakfast, or eat dinner, but it is not a time management tool. Fasting is not a weight loss tool. This isn't like a quick fix. Fasting is huge in the fitness industry these days. It's not a weight loss tool in any way, shape, or form. If that's your goal with this, really check your heart, maybe look at a different type of fast you can do where you maybe don't lose weight, because it's not about losing weight. Two more things. Fasting is not dangerous or bad for your health. Like I said, in the fitness industry, it's shown to provide really good health benefits for you if you lean into it. And then the last thing is, fasting isn't for everyone right now when it comes to food. If you find yourself if you're in a place where you've had a volatile relationship with food, an eating disorder, if any of that has been part of your history, I would really encourage you to talk to Sarah, talk to me, talk to a pastor, talk to a friend who's a mature believer in Jesus, just to unpack some of that. And there's different ways that you can get after fasting that don't have to do with food, if food has just been like this crazy issue in your life, or a harmful issue, or a triggering issue in your life. Let's talk about what fasting is now. We've talked about what it's not. We've kind of untangled that. Is that tracking at all? It's kind of cold outside, warm in here, kind of sleepy in here. So I need you to stay with me, okay? So we're unraveling what fasting is not. Now we're going to talk about what fasting is. This is what fasting is. Fasting is abstaining from food for spiritual purposes. In Scripture, it really does talk about abstaining from food and designates food as the thing that you are not engaging with. Sometimes food and water, but typically just food. Fasting is saying no to food for a period of time to focus more intently and intentionally on God, to seek His will for something in your life. Fasting is to seek His will for something in your life, or it's to turn from sin that you've gotten so used to in your life, and you're saying, God, I want to come back to you. I want to repent of something in my life. You see woven throughout the pages and the stories of Scripture, people turning from their sin back to God, and fasting is a part of that process to say, I am mourning over the sin that I'd fallen in love with way more than you, God. I turn back to the lover of my soul, and this thing that I'd poured so much time and energy and love to, I am leaving behind, and so I am fasting as I come back to you, because I'm weeping, grieving over the fact that I spent so much time with that thing that had nothing to do with you. Fasting is saying no for a period of time to remind ourselves of our deep need for God. Our hunger in fasting reminds us, it's like this carnal reminder in our body that we need something, and that thing is food. But when that hunger pain comes up, we're reminded of our need for God in fasting. And fasting is really, it's this opting into weakness that reminds us that we need to be so very reliant on Him. The message of this culture, what you're getting every day, is to be more self-reliant, more successful, more beautiful, more stunning, more impressive, more powerful. And fasting takes all those bricks down and breaks you down to this foundation and acknowledges that, God, I need you. God, I'm weak without you. And that's not a natural thing to want to opt into. Does anybody want to just wake up on a Monday and just feel weak and needy? Anybody? Nobody, right? Fasting is literally opting into being weak and needy. And that's what God calls us to, because what happens when we find ourselves weak and needy, we find the strength of the Lord that is so much greater than any strength that you could ever muster up. And that's what this is about. Why fasting? I want to hit a couple more things. Romans 12 is a beautiful reason why we fast. Romans 12 says this, just 1 and 2, very famous verses here. These are some of the bangers of Scripture right here that you're going to be very used to. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. So offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. That's like alluding to fasting in some way, shape, or form. And I love this part. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This idea that there's a pattern of this world that's so strong that wants us to stay in rhythm with it, stay in step with it, and follow their script for our life. And fasting is this active way that we break free from the patterns of this world. It's not the only way that we can do it, but fasting is this way that we break free from buying into everything we're being sold, consuming everything we're told to consume, and being about what this world tells us to be about. Fasting breaks us free from that pattern so that we can what? It says, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good and pleasing and perfect will. I'll say this, fasting is a part of discerning God's will for your life. I will say that. If you're in a period where you're really trying to seek God, really trying to discern his will, fasting won't make him speak to you more. Fasting will turn down the volume of the world so that you can hear him more because he is speaking to you. You're not earning him giving you a word. He's speaking to you all the time through his word, through his people, maybe in a silent time in prayer, in your heart, in your innermost thoughts. But like, if the volume of the world, if the patterns of the world are so consistent and so loud, you have no shot at discerning his will. That's what Paul is saying in his letter to the Romans. So fasting is saying no to the patterns of this world. So the posture of your life is a yes to God. Saying no to your appetite opens you up to say yes to God and what he does, because it turns down the volume of the world and allows you to hear what he might actually be calling you to do. Paul's literally saying, like, you're not even going to have a clear understanding of God wants and desires from you if you're still conforming to the patterns of this world. Fasting is one, not the only, but one way to just break free from that pattern in a very tangible way for a day, for 2 days, abstaining from certain foods, abstaining from all food, whatever it is, it breaks you from the pattern of the world. I guess I have a question for you is, where do you need clarity from God in your life? And have you considered fasting to align your heart and your mind with him? Augustine has a great quote on this. He's a very formational early Christian that has formed a lot of Christian thought over the years, theologically and philosophically. He says this: fasting cleanses the soul, raises the mind, subjects one's flesh to the spirit, renders the heart contrite and humble, scatters the clouds of concupiscence. I had to look that up. It's like lust, basically. Quenches the fire of lust and kindles the true light of chastity. Friends, fasting is like a cold plunge for your soul. Have you ever seen these people cold plunging? Yeah, somebody has one back there. Yeah. So some of you YAers, I see you doing it and I watch you. I can't move past it. I can't move past it in my stories on Instagram, because as I'm watching it, I just die inside when I watch it. Like, it looks so uncomfortable. It looks so hard. It looks so unpleasant, but obviously it's shown great health benefits, right? And people who do it, every time they're looking to go into the cold plunge, they just like, I've been looking forward to this cold plunge and that shock to my system so deeply all day. I would venture to say there's a little bit of trepidation when they pop in there. Like, your skin's about to go numb, right? But fasting is like a cold plunge for your soul. It's something that cleanses and shocks the toxins out of your soul, that you've just become so used to so many things in your life that are not the way they should be. I need you to hear that. Every single person in this room has become so used to things in your life that are not as they should be, and a fast wakes you up to things that are not as they should be in your life. And that's the beauty of it. It's like smelling salt. When you get knocked out and somebody puts smelling salt in front of your face and you wake up, or it's like a cold plunge that just sets your body, like every nerve ending is going off before it goes numb. It wakes you up. Fasting wakes you up. Richard Foster, he's written a lot about spiritual disciplines, like 90s, 2000s. He's kind of like the godfather to like a John Mark Comer today. He says this: more than any other single discipline, fasting reveals the things that control us. This is a wonderful benefit to the true disciple who longs to be transformed into the image of Christ. I think that's such a poignant thought. Fasting reveals to us the things that control us, the things that we go to for comfort, the things that we go to for our identity, the things that we go to maybe to numb or escape the problems of our lives. When we fast, we're forced to face our lives, ourselves, our sin, our God, our hopes, our dreams. We're forced to look in the mirror when we fast. I'm coming to the end of this section. I just want to encourage you and challenge you that you actually need a cold plunge for your soul to begin this year. You need to fast in some way, shape, or form. Like some way, shape, or form, you need to abstain from something in your life to just reset a pattern of this world that you've become entirely too comfortable with, that you've become entirely too accustomed to, that has become a deep part of your identity. The first time you engaged in that sin, it was like off-putting. You might have felt like, oh my gosh, I know this is wrong, but I kind of like it. But you've been engaged in that so long that it's not this thing that you just like did and you feel ashamed of. It's become part of your identity now. Like you've been in it so long that this is just part of, it's woven into the fibers of your identity, and fasting will reveal that thing to you. And God will reveal that thing to you through fasting that has just been so core to who you are, that has nothing to do with who God or Jesus is. So I want to encourage everybody in here, you should fast. We're going to start a 21-day fast in 2 days. I'll talk more about that. But and we can talk about the options that you have, but I want to encourage you to fast. But this is the point where I have to point out the tension in fasting, and I need to make it abundantly clear. The next thing you need to know is fasting isn't performative. Repeat that after me. Fasting isn't performative. Good. So Jesus says when you fast, but then he goes into all the things that you should and shouldn't do when you fast. He's speaking and religious leaders are around, and they were so over the top and so extra when they fasted and made everybody know by the way they dressed, by the way they didn't wash their face, by the way they looked like so put out. It was almost like a Broadway show for them, like, oh, I'm fasting and you should really care and look up to me and applaud me because I'm fasting. And Jesus is saying, when you fast, don't do it like the hypocrites do. Like people will applaud you and that's great, but you're not going to get the reward from your Father in heaven if you're fasting like the hypocrites do. When you fast, like put oil on your head, wash your face, keep yourself together. Don't go on and on and on and on and go out there about how you're fasting. A while back, I was one of the leaders for our high school group here at Calvary. And we went down to Mexico, Ensenada on a mission trip. And like a fool, I chose to fast for 3 days with no food, going to Mexico where they have the best tacos in the world, like at taco stands. It was a stupid idea, right? So I go down there and I'm doing it. And it's just so funny because I was like so into my fast. I would like get up super early and go do my quiet time, like overlooking the ocean, and come back. And everybody's just like just waking up, you know, out of their bed. And I would just like come back with my coffee, kind of looking down on everybody, you know, like, yeah. Hope you had a nice sleep. You know, I've been praying for the last 2 hours. I've been fasting for the last 2 days. Like if you have a prayer, let me know. I think I have a clearer line to God than you right now. You know, like there's this pride that wells up within you when you fast. And I think Jesus knew that. This is the thing. Fasting isn't performative, but I need you to hear this about us as human beings. We are wired to try to get applause from people. You are wired to try to get approval from people, applause from people. And so even when we're doing good and holy things, we still want a round of applause from the people in our lives. And Jesus is saying that's not the point of this fast. We're wired for applause from people. And so this isn't for people to think more highly of you. It's not for the applause of people around you. I was talking to somebody earlier about fasting. I would encourage you as you enter into this, tell a couple people about your fast. It doesn't have to be a secret. It doesn't have to be like weird and legalistic. Like tell some people in your life who will be praying for you and holding you accountable. If you're going to do a certain kind of fast, it's so much better to do it with somebody else. To be able to text them and be like, dude, do you know what I want right now? A hamburger, you know, like, and to have them be like, yeah, me too, but we're not going to do it, you know, because I've done fasts like solo and alone and didn't tell anybody because I kind of took that too literally from Jesus. And then I would like give up at my weakest moment because there's weak moments of a fast where you just want to give up. And it's so beautiful to do it in community. So tell a couple of people, but don't make it a show. This isn't about the applause of other people. And I need you to hear this again. This is not about the approval of God in your life. Because of Jesus' death and resurrection, there's literally nothing that you can do. If you have claimed him as your Lord, there's nothing you can do to get more of his approval. He approves of you, full stop. So this isn't to earn anything from God. This has nothing to do with performance. It has nothing to do with applause. It has nothing to do with God's approval. This has to do with your relationship with God and seeking after him with all of your heart. Here's the last thing I'll say about the performance. If the enemy can't get you to do the wrong thing, which is like obvious sin, he'll get you to do the right thing with the wrong motivation. If he can't get you to do the wrong thing, you're trying to do the holy thing, the enemy still wants to sneak in, he'll get you to do the right thing with the wrong motivation. These are the only people that Jesus called out. Like Jesus welcomed in prostitutes. Jesus welcomed in lepers. Jesus welcomed in the outcast. Jesus welcomed the thief on the cross who did nothing in his entire life that would have deserved heaven. And this dude just throws a half-court buzzer beater prayer to Jesus. And he's like, you're in, dude. Like, Jesus welcomed everybody. The only people he called out were the people who were doing the right things with the wrong motivations. Religious leaders of his days, Pharisees, Sadducees. The religious leaders are the ones that he always called out. So that would be my caution to all of us, and it's my caution to myself even in this. Whenever I enter into a fast, is like, dude, this is not about applause. God doesn't love you more. He doesn't approve of you more. This is just a practice that wakes us up, breaks us from the patterns of the world, heightens our sensitivity to sin that we've gotten so used to in our lives, and brings us back to the Father. So fasting isn't performative. It's not about people's applause or God's approval. Fasting is about God getting to your heart. Fasting is about God getting your heart. In Joel 2:12, this is God talking to his people through his prophet. And he says, even now declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting and weeping and mourning. Rend your heart and not your garments. They would like rend their garment. They like rip their garments in show of repentance. And he's like, don't do anything in show for me. Just bring your heart back to me. He says, rend your heart, not your garments. Return to the Lord your God. Hear this, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love, and he relents from sending calamity. Who knows? He may turn and relent and leave behind a blessing, grain offerings and drink offerings for the Lord your God. Friends, fasting at its core, if you are entering into it, this is about God getting your heart. There's so many things in competition for your heart in this world, even within your own heart, your own ego, your own pride, your own desires, your own plans. All of that is in competition for your heart with God. Fasting is about God getting your heart. So when he found Israel in sin, he said, return to me with fasting. When he finds us in a place of sin that we're not supposed to be, he says, return to me with fasting. Return to me with all of your heart. Fasting is this acknowledgement that I need you so badly, God. If I'm honest with you, in the day-to-day, like on a Tuesday at 3 p.m., I don't typically feel like, God, I need you so badly right now. Like Wednesday at 1 p.m. or Wednesday at lunch, in my heart of hearts, am I just like, God, I need you. I'm at the end of my rope if you don't show up. If I don't have you, this, like my life, like I can't even go on with. Does anybody else feel me on that? That like we're not always just constantly longing for God, if we're honest? Fasting leads you to a place where you're in a bit of physical discomfort or discomfort of not doing what you're used to doing. That puts us in a place of needing God. It puts us in a posture of somebody that has no other option but Jesus. It's like my friend a couple years ago, that called me at the end of his rope after making a mistake, that like, he was in the lowest place of his life, and he was like, I will do anything to get my life back after the mistake that I've made. I will confess to anyone. I just need Jesus. That's the heart posture that fasting can get us to. Like, I'll throw everything else. Just give me Jesus. That's my only option. It's getting us to that heart posture. It's the heart posture of a prisoner that I met on death row in Angola prison, which is the largest prison in the United States of America. And this man on death row who had been in there for decades and was going to die there, was going to be executed there, had found Jesus. And he had talked about his relationship with Jesus. And we were talking about it, and he was just talking about how much he needed Jesus every single day. And he went into this whole rendition of, I need thee. Oh Lord, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, and he sang that out and it was echoing in this jail cell. Like, that's somebody who needs Jesus. And then you have me who's just kind of living my life most of the time, not needing Jesus like that. And so fasting gets us closer to that posture with God and further away from this, I can just do it on my own. Fasting puts us in that posture. Fasting reminds us of our sin in a way that stirs our appetite for God's grace in our lives. I kind of hit on this earlier, but we just get so used to things that we shouldn't be doing that we know are bad for us, and fasting wakes us up to how unhealthy those things are in our lives. So I guess my questions are, where do you need to be resensitized to sin in your life? Fasting would help with that. Where have you gotten so used to doing something that grieves the heart of God that you need to resensitize yourself to that sin through fasting? Where do you need to be reminded of the overwhelming grace and compassion of Jesus Christ for you in that place in your life? Because your fasting doesn't save you. Your fasting doesn't make you forgiven. It reminds you that he's saved you, and it reminds you that you're already forgiven and already welcomed in. This is the last point, and this is something that I've been experiencing over the last week and a half, I'll say. Fasting is about more than me. It's just about more than you. So much of the time when we think about fasting, we think this is just like my thing between me and God. But if you look specifically throughout the Old Testament, the kind of fasting that Yahweh calls for from Israel is not just about them. And it's not about performance. And it's not just about holiness. In Isaiah 58, 6-7, God says this through his prophet Isaiah, is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Friends, this prophet Isaiah is saying fasting is about more than me. When we fast and we actually enter in with the right posture, it actually leads to justice for others. It leads to showing up for others. It leads up to being empathetic in a new way towards others that you're not capable of unless you're heightened to what's going on around you through the practice of fasting. I just got to be honest with you on a personal level. I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor for years. This topic of justice and this topic of showing up for other people who are either on the margins or who haven't been shown up for, who have gotten the short end of the stick, this is something that's so deeply embedded in my heart and that matters so much to me. And I want it to matter to you. I really do. So I'm just going to say a couple of things. Just contextually, I don't want to make assumptions about everybody here, but like, we live in a pretty nice place and have most of the things we need, typically. All varying degrees, but typically I would call this like a blessed area in terms of what we have. I love this about fasting. I want you to hear this. Fasting removes comfort from our lives in order to see others' discomfort more clearly. Like, it removes the comfort of food. It removes the comfort of something that you're so used to. We have to manufacture discomfort a lot of times in our lives, physical discomfort. I think there's emotional, spiritual discomfort that we all experience all the time. But when it comes to physical discomfort, we have to manufacture that a little bit more. So fasting removes comfort from our lives in order to see others' discomfort more clearly. As we feel hunger pangs, we're reminded that some people go hungry every day. It gives us an empathy. When we feel that pain in our body, it gives us an empathy for the pain that somebody else feels in their body. Fasting removes convenience from our lives in order to see the inconvenience in others' lives. As we go without, we are reminded that so many go without every single day. You can fill in the blank, from safety to shelter to autonomy over their own body. Like, as we go without, we understand that there are so many people, yes, in this world, but yes, in the state, yes, in the city, yes, in this town, that go without in some way, shape, or form every single day. The last thing is fasting removes our ability to choose whatever we want in order to see those who have less choices than us. We have a lot of choices, and when you take some choices away, you start to see people who have less choices more clearly. You start to have an empathy that will lead to action, and that's what God is calling us to. Hear this, John Chrysostom, 4th century church father, he's an early dude in the church, says this: "No act of virtue can be great if it is not followed by an advantage for others. So if you fast, show me your fast by your works. If you see someone who is hungry, feed them. If you see someone who is oppressed, come to their aid. That is the fast that God desires." So I'm going to get into what we're going to do for a fast, and then I'm going to invite you to do something in response to this idea that fasting is about something more than me. So, like I said, we canceled last week, and we were going to start our fast last week, but we postponed it because we wanted to teach and preach on fasting before we called you to fast. And so we will be fasting. I think it's up there. Yeah, we're going to be fasting January 18th, which is Saturday. Give you tonight and tomorrow to really contemplate, pray through what you might want to fast. We're going to start together as a community on Saturday. And like I said, we plan to start next week. And then this isn't me bragging. This is me providing clarity as to what's going on in my life and how this is playing out here. I didn't want to preach on fasting without fasting first. So I tried to go ahead of everybody, and then we postponed a week. So now I'm like really ahead of everybody. That's what it feels like. I'm like kind of too far ahead. So had been fasting, and then these fires happened. And like I said, for 5 years, I lived 3 miles away from Altadena, which just burned completely. If you've been watching the news, it's just gone. So I lived 3 blocks. Did I say miles or blocks? Miles. I lived 3 blocks away from Altadena, just right there. Lived there for 5 years. Lived in Pasadena for 15 years. Pasadena and Altadena relationally as cities are kind of like TO and Westlake, in the sense that like very tight. It's not like, oh, that's Westlake and that's TO, like so different. Like it's all kind of one community in some way, shape, or form, even if they have their differences. So if like you were in Westlake and something happened in TO, you're like, that is close to home. That matters, right? So with Altadena basically burning down, like Pasadena feels like Altadena like is ours, and it feels like Pasadena just burned down. And so in the midst of this fast and this just the devastation that so many of my friends were experiencing, we have these cool sweatshirts, right? Imago Day, this conference. This conference was slated to be at the end of this month, January 31st and February 1st. And in the midst of the beginning of this year, with all these fires happening and it feeling so close to home, it was our time we were supposed to promote Imago Day during that time more than any time. And for us, as we talked as a team, it just felt kind of tone deaf and insensitive to a lot of people that we love to be just pumping a conference when their house just is gone and that they're experiencing this devastation. And so we talked about it, and we were like, okay, what if we postponed the conference a month, just moved it back a month, which is what we're doing. You can see it up there now. We're going to move it back a month. And we can give you details if you've already bought tickets and you can't go to those dates. There's options for you, including refund, including like maybe you want to pay for somebody else to go and just keep it with us. Maybe you want to donate it to Relief to Fire. Whatever you want to do, you can get your money back or give it to somebody else. That's not a problem. But we said, what if we moved Imago Day back? And what if we did something for those in need? I think being in a place of fasting and just being heightened in my awareness to people in need and to people that I love and to people that I was a pastor to for years who have lost their houses, I know you probably have felt this in your life. Like it feels like your heart is like outside of you somewhere else suffering because people that you love are suffering. And that's kind of what this experience was like for me. And in my head, I was like, I'm going down to Altadena this coming Saturday. It was like a non-negotiable. It was the first free day I had. So I'm going down there. And then I was like, man, I've been here for a year as your pastor, and I really love you. And I really want you to love the place that I came from and the people that I love and help the people that I love. So it's really last minute. This decision was just made this week to invite more people along. But if you want to come and help me clean up a nonprofit that just got trashed by the fires, not burned down, but just trashed by the winds and everything, we're going to meet here at 8:30 on Saturday morning. We're going to caravan down all in our own cars. We can carpool. So if you can make the first half of the day and you got to leave, all good. If you can't come till later, we'll give you the address. But we're just going to cruise down there and we're going to clean up this nonprofit that serves underserved kids through tutoring, through discipleship, and through performing arts. And this place is kind of a wreck and it needs to be ready for Monday morning for these kids to come back. And so that's what we're going to do this Saturday. And then on the day that our conference was supposed to be, February 1st, we're going to do another outreach. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but the vision here is like, let's, in a season of like really crazy, like historical loss for the greater Los Angeles County, even if it's not in our backyard, it's very close and close to people we love. Before we do a conference together, let's go serve some people who have lost a whole lot. And then when we join together, I can't wait to see what God's going to do in this community. Like, let's go serve together, and then let's worship God at this conference together. And I truly believe as we fast, as we serve, and then as we show up at this conference, God is going to do things in this ministry and things in our lives that are truly going to astound us and truly blow us away. Does that sound good? Yeah? Okay. So if you want to go on Saturday, there's a sign-up list right there. Write your name there. I'm just going to text everybody on a text thread. Sorry, another text thread in your life. But like, I'm going to text you on a text thread, and it's just going to be me communicating to you. I'm going to tell you where to meet, what to wear. You're going to need long sleeves, long pants. We're providing eye mask, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to be cleaning up ashes, and we're going to be cleaning up buildings. So it's going to be like pretty hard work. And then I know I used to live there too. I forgot to tell you guys that. I used to live there on property at this nonprofit. So I know the neighbors around there. So like if we finish up, we'll just go talk to the neighbors and see if they need anything, if they're there. So it's not like, I don't want you to expect like this perfectly curated experience. It's more like we're just like going out there and figuring it out. There are some clear objectives that are clear. And then beyond that, we'll see what happens. We'll probably get back here around 5, leave there at 3:30 or 4, come back here around 5. Like I said, go with people who are on the same calendar as you. If you can't stay the whole time, you guys can just cruise back. And that's going to be what we do. And then February 1st, we're going to do something too. Now, is that all clear enough? Just sign up and it'll be clear. I want to get out of here so we can worship because the worship was so good on the front half. We need to get back into it. So let me give you some clarity on the YA fast, what we're calling you into. So this is 21 days, January 18th through February 7th. Here are the types of fasting. Everything that I'm going to say at the very end of this, there's a QR code. Hit it. It'll land you on a beautiful website that just has our resources. Sarah put this together. Everything that I'm saying here is on the website. And it can give you clarity on what you might want to fast. So let me just walk through it. The first one is complete fast. This is called you don't eat. Okay? You don't eat. You drink some water. When I've done these before, I've given myself coffee. I've given myself tea and water, right? If you don't want to do that, don't do it. Do water, right? So figure out what a complete fast looks like for you. I would say start with like a day, maybe 2 days if you've never done it. Just at some point over the next 21 days, don't try to go crazy, try to go big if you've never done anything like that before. Start small and see if you might want to do that a couple times over the course of these 21 days. Yeah, the band's coming back up. They're getting ready to go. Okay. The Daniel fast, you can read about this online. To put it in like terms that we would all understand, this basically means you're a vegan and you don't drink alcohol. That's the fast, okay? It's based off of the book of Daniel where they They refuse to eat the things of Babylon because they're in captivity in Babylon. So what Daniel was doing with this fast is he was breaking free from the patterns of the world that he found himself in and refusing to eat like they ate because he was trying to break free from them. You can do a partial fast. Sometimes this is called a Jewish fast. This involves abstaining from eating any food like in the morning and the afternoon. So like you wake up and you fast until dinner, like that kind of thing. You can do sun up to sundown fast. That's a way that you can get after this. Or you can do a selective fast. For you, maybe all this feels entirely overwhelming. You're like, I can't do any of this. Maybe it's like when things get hard, you eat Pringles. Don't eat Pringles for 21 days. Like when things get hard, you go to fast food. Don't go to fast food for 21 days. Maybe things get hard, you drink alcohol. Don't drink alcohol for 21 days. These are all options of a selective fast where you just take something out that's such a comfort to you that you go to run away from problems, to numb out or detach from problems. Like take that out of your life and see what happens, right? See what God does and how he shows up to you when you take that out. The last one is kind of a soul fast. We are asking that food would be involved, but again, if food is a real issue for you, we're not asking that of you. And what you can do is you can say no to social media. We're all saying no to TikTok soon, right? Isn't that what's happening? Anyway, so say no to social media. The government is saying no for you to TikTok. So say no to Instagram. So say no to social media in some way, shape, or form. Maybe say no to TV in some way, shape, or form, or shows. If you like to binge watch, don't binge watch. TikTok got us riled up, right? Why what? What is? Okay, this is a good question. We had the question, why binge watching is so good. Binge watching can be really fun sometimes and amazing sometimes. I do it. He says every time. I would argue that binge watching is a form of escapism and a form of turning your mind off in a way that you're not addressing the problems in your life. So choose one of those. Can we, last slide, I'm going forever, but whatever. Get started. Go to the second to last. Get started. Choose a reason and a focus. This is important. So we're going to worship and it's going to be great, but this is really important for you. And I need you to hear me and stay with me on this. Choose a reason for your fast. Choose a focus for your fast. You're not just like not eating to not eat. Like you're not just abstaining from something to not abstain. Like, are you discerning something from God in your life? Maybe you're praying for his will in your life in some way. Is there a sin you're so used to? Or is there a thing that you keep running to over and over that you think is comforting you that is actually just making you miserable? And you want to just get separation from that and seek God. Choose your reason and your focus. That's a really big part. And that's why we're giving you tonight, all day tomorrow before Saturday. And then I would say choose a fast. Choose one of those that we've talked about: full fast, partial fast, Daniel fast, all those different options, selective fast. And then schedule your times. If you're doing, complete fasts, maybe choose one day a week over the next 3 weeks. Maybe you do a 24-hour fast one day a week. Maybe you do a Daniel fast for 21 days. Daniel fast, you can eat as much as you want. You just can't eat a lot of things that you usually eat. Choose the fast that you feel like works for you and lean into that, and then establish a pattern for your life. And I would say in that pattern, tell a friend or two about it. It's so much better together. It's so much better to have somebody checking in on you. So much better to have somebody who can pick you up when you're feeling weak, you're not feeling strong. So much better to literally text somebody like, I want to go to In-N-Out. Do you want to go? And they're like, no, we're on the fast. You're like, oh yeah, okay, we're not going to go to In-N-Out. So like, choose somebody. I just want to pray for you right now. God, I just pray that everybody in here would just really still their hearts and their minds before you. Really consider this, God. Really consider what you would have them fast from over the next 21 days. Not as performance, not for people's applause, God, not for your approval in any way, shape, or form, but God, so that you can get our heart. Holy Spirit, would you bring to mind the type of fast, the focus of the fast? God, bring people to mind that we would want to walk through with this and do it in community.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was a blessing to you, and I want to invite you to join us on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. for our young adults service. We're there every Thursday, and I'd love to see you there. Also, like and subscribe and click on one of these for more content to help you live and love like Jesus.